If you're getting tired and sick of that same old chicken, rice, and broccoli recipe for your meal prep, well, I've got a treat for you guys today. Today we're making a ground turkey minestrone soup that is high in protein, high in fiber, is meal prep so you can actually make several servings of it, and we're gonna break that all down for you here today. So stay tuned. So for this minestrone soup, what we're gonna do here is we've got about 3 pounds of 97.3 lean ground turkey, in addition to a entire box of whole grain pasta. We're also going to use 2 cans of red beans or kidney beans. We're going to use 1 can of diced tomatoes. We're going to do a 32-ounce container of low sodium beef broth in addition to a extra can of beef broth. And I'll actually put 1 extra cup of water in there as well. I'm following a calorie deficit right now, so I'm trying to make the food a little bit more, have a little bit more volume, a little bit more substance, and right, water is a great way to do that. So in addition to that, we're gonna season with we've got some oregano, we've got some bay leaves, some thyme, some basil, and some black pepper. I'm keeping the sodium a little bit lower because we're getting some salt from the low sodium beef broth. We're getting some salt from the, this might be no salt added, but 15 milligrams of sodium added there. So when it starts to add up when we actually put this recipe together. So I'm not gonna add any additional salt, but know that you can on your end. I'll go through the nutrition facts here at the end as well. In addition to our protein, our whole grain, our beans, our seasonings, and our low sodium beef broth, we've got our veggies over here. We've got some pre-cut up garlic, which is about, I think I did about 6 of these cloves, cut those up, chopped them up nicely. Same thing, I did 1 whole onion, chopped that up, got that ready for us here. And then finally, I've got a mixture of vegetables, which is going to be about a cup and a half of carrots, a cup and a half of celery, in addition to 1 whole zucchini and 1 whole yellow squash. That will all go into our soup as well, making it this awesome soup that's super voluminous, tons of fiber, tons of nutrients, tons of protein. So yeah, really looking forward to putting this one together. Let's go ahead and throw it together. Okay, so from here, what we're going to do is we're gonna start by adding, actually live, there's one more ingredient. We're gonna be doing some olive oil as well. And I only have a teaspoon measurement, so we're actually gonna do a full tablespoon, which is going to be 3 of these. We'll let that oil heat up for just a minute, and then we'll toss in our onions and garlic. We've got this pot heated to medium heat right now. We'll go ahead and toss in our chopped onions and our garlic. We'll let these get a nice little aroma and start to look transparent. We're gonna go ahead and toss in our ground turkey. So now that we have our meat, it's pretty cooked through at this point. It's not, I wouldn't say it's all the way cooked through, but it's still got a lot of time to cook here. We're gonna actually add all of our other ingredients except for the pasta, which we'll cook separately. We're gonna start out with the seasonings here. So again, we're gonna do some black pepper. We're gonna do some basil leaves, some oregano leaves, and some thyme. You can season this how you'd like. If you like a little bit more flavor, you can go a little bit heavier. If you like a little less flavor, you can keep it a little bit lighter. I'm gonna get this all mixed in. It's time to go ahead and add the rest of our ingredients for this minestrone soup. So we're starting out with our canned kidney beans, which we have drained and rinsed. Toss those in. I also have the vegetable matrix of our 1.5 cup carrots, 1.5 cup chopped celery, and then 1 zucchini and 1 yellow squash. Those go in. We have our 1 can of diced tomatoes. And then we're gonna go with our can of low sodium beef broth. We got 1 of those in there. And then in addition to that, we're gonna do a full 32 ounces of, again, low sodium beef broth. This is why I didn't add the sodium, is because we are getting a significant amount from the broth, the turkey, and a few of the other ingredients, including the pasta as well. One thing I do with this recipe specifically, like I said, I'm doing a calorie deficit right now, so having more food is oftentimes better, even though it doesn't have calories. So what I'll do is I'll actually fill up 1 or 2 of these and actually top it with that as well to just give it a little bit more volume, if you will, even if it's just coming from water. All right, so at this point what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and stir and combine everything. Bring it up to a simmer. Then we're gonna turn down the heat and let that simmer for, I don't know, I like to normally let it simmer for about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how much time I wanna let it cook for. This is also where you could just do a crock pot and let it, cook on low for several hours until everything's well combined and well cooked through. Cover it and let it cook for a little while. While this is getting up to a little bit of a simmer, I like to go ahead and add a couple bay leaves and get those mixed in and let those cook, which I will pull out later on. Gives it a little bit more flavor. Being that it's kind of low in sodium, you kind of want all the flavor you can get out of it. I've made this recipe a couple times now, so I would suggest trying to add as much seasoning and flavor as possible, because you can tell that it's a lower sodium recipe for sure, which is a good thing, especially if you're trying to watch your sodium intake. So we'll let that come up to temp, get that to a boil and simmer, and let that sit for about 30, maybe an hour. We have 2 steps left here. At this point, we're just gonna boil our whole grain pasta, but we're just gonna boil it for about 5 minutes. It requires about 8 to 10 minutes. That being said, the reason that we're boiling this before we put this in the pot over here is because I've done it before and it ends up soaking up all the juices, all of the broth and everything from that, and it turns it into mush. So by pre-boiling this, just even for a few minutes, gets it to a nice consistency and texture, enough that we can put it in there without it breaking apart or falling apart or soaking up all the stuff. Bring that up to a boil again, and then we'll turn that down. Like I said, we're gonna do this for about 5 minutes here. So we're gonna set a timer, 5 minutes. And then once these are cooked, the last step is to add it to here and then to separate it into about 12 servings. So we'll get to that here in just a minute. All right, pasta's cooked. We'll go ahead and get this cooled off. Alrighty, last but not least is we're gonna go ahead and add in our noodles. It's gonna be a tight squeeze, but I've done this before, and it has all fit before in this big old pot. So we've added our slightly, al dente cooked noodles in there. Give it a nice little mix. I'm gonna cover and cook for another probably 10 to 15 minutes. It could be ready now, but I like to get a little bit more of the flavor all combined a little bit further. So, like I said, simmer for another 10 to 15 minutes, then we'll get it all divided. All right, so last but not least here is to go ahead and get this divided out into 12 servings, because that's what this recipe makes. So to do that, I've got this massive bowl set on top of the scale. Now, this is probably a long roundabout way to do this. You could theoretically just weigh your container before when you're cooking it, and then weigh it after you have all the cooked ingredients in there. That could do the same thing, and then divide that number by 12. But for this, we like to make things hard. So we'll go ahead and do that. We're gonna transfer here. All right, so our entire 12 recipes actually weighs about 6,605 grams. We'll call it 6,600 grams. So, like I said, let's take 6,600 and divide that by 12. Cool. So that's going to be about 550 grams per serving for the 12 recipes, or 12 servings, excuse me. So then what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and take this bowl off, knowing that now. And for each of these, we won't go through all of them, but for each of these, what I'll do here is I'll take this, tar it out, get it to 0, and then what I'll do is I will add 550 grams to this serving here. And there you have it. We'll then top this with a little Parmesan cheese once we've got them all laid out, and we are ready to go for this ground turkey minestrone soup. Okay, so now that we've got this ground turkey minestrone all portioned out, we ended up making about 12 servings, only pulled out a few from the refrigerator, otherwise we'd cover this entire topping here. Figured we'd go through a few other facts for this recipe specifically. So the final touches for this recipe is going to be adding some reduced fat Parmesan cheese. Now, because they only sell 6-ounce bags, that's kind of what I base this recipe off of. So you just have to buy one of these bags, other than using 2 bags, buying 2 bags and then having to only use like 1.5 bags, and then the other goes to waste. Like, what's the point there? So instead, what I've did is just base it all off of this. There's technically supposed to be about 170 grams of Parmesan cheese in each bag. So that being said, I think it was about 14 or 15 grams of Parmesan cheese that goes on each serving. That way this one bag can be distributed across all of the 12 servings for this recipe. So that's the last step that we'll do for this one here. Other than that, let's go ahead and talk about the nutrition information, right? This is the piece, right? You're meal prepping, you're trying to follow a calorie deficit, you're trying to find recipes that are, keeping you full, giving you enough protein, making sure that they're providing some vitamins and minerals, all the fun stuff, right? So that being said, we have this recipe specifically provides right around 595 calories. I'm doing this on Chronometer right now. Maybe I can link to it down in the description down below. So yeah, I created this recipe in Chronometer. It's about 559 calories, about 46 grams of protein. It's about 55 grams of carbohydrate and about 18.6 grams of dietary fat. This meal provides a lot more than just that. This meal also provides about 20% of my daily fiber requirement, which is about 40 grams per day. So it could be a lot higher if your calories are lower. Some other highlighted nutrients here: it provides 100% of your B12, about a great source, an excellent source of potassium, and about 34% of my total daily value. Vitamin A, 25%. Calcium is about 25%. Iron is about 83%. Other additional nutrients that this meal specifically provides is 20% or 86 milligrams of magnesium, 34% of the potassium, so about 1,168 milligrams of potassium. And then, like I mentioned, right, we didn't add salt to this meal specifically, and that was for a specific reason. Each serving already has a significant amount of salt in there. So seeing that we're trying to keep salt on the, not overly doing sodium intake, this meal provides about 640 milligrams of salt. If you're following a 1,500 milligram sodium restricted diet, that's about 45% of the overall value for sodium that you need per day. In addition to that, you could be following a little bit higher. Let's say you're just keeping it at the standard, which is around 2,300 milligrams. That's somewhere in the range of probably 20 to 30% of your sodium intake just with this one meal. So it probably aligns a little bit more with that idea of not necessarily a low sodium diet, but more or less just a regular intake of sodium. Now, if you are an athlete and you are training, it's the springtime right now. So if you are outside, you're sweating a lot, right? Then it could be called for a little bit of extra salt. So we have some variability we can do with this meal specifically. And then finally, fiber content. This meal provides about 10.5 grams of dietary fiber, so call it 11 grams of dietary fiber. That is coming from the beans, the whole grains, the veggies, so it's really well-rounded in those areas. Of the 18.6 grams of dietary fat, about 5.1 are coming from saturated fat, so that's not terrible, especially if you're following. Typically, you want that in the range of like 5 to 10% of your total daily calories. It's depending on what source you look at, whether it's the American Heart Association or a low-fat diet. It's probably in that 5 to 6% of your total calories. So probably somewhere around the range of like a total daily saturated fat intake of, call it 14 to 20 grams of dietary saturated fat intake per day. Now, if you're on the 10% range, just a normal diet, not following a low-fat diet, then that could be upwards of, call it 20 to 30 grams of saturated fat per day. So being that this meal is just 5 grams, it falls into both categories really well. All things considered, right? We've got a high protein, high fiber. We also have, the broth and the extra water, so a lot of volume, tons of veggies in there as well with beans and some whole grain pasta. This meal, what I've noticed when I eat this meal is it really turns off that food noise and it keeps me pretty full for several hours. I say I've got about 3 to 4 hours, especially in a calorie deficit, before I'm like, ooh, I need food again. So that's why I love this meal right now. Is this, it's a huge amount of volume, tons of protein, tons of fiber, keeps me full, keeps me satisfied for a very long time to come. So all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe. If you guys are watching it here on YouTube, then I'm gonna put a link down below as I kind of build it out on the website, and so you can go find the recipe there as well. Alrighty, until next time.